Thanks for joining me, Brad. I'll just get straight to it, if that's okay. First of all, you joined Liverpool in 1997 after a successful work permit appeal. When were you first aware of Liverpool's interest in you? Because it must have been quite a lengthy process for you going through all these work permits.
Yeah, it was a long process. The first time I knew of Liverpool's interest was when Graham Souness was at the club back in I guess 1992. And Tom Saunders at the time had flown over to come meet myself and watch me in training. I know Steve Highway at the time had some ties with. Hold on one second, my dog Wally, get down. Who had some ties with the United States at the time, and a couple of agents that I worked with early on had sort of ties into Liverpool, and they started watching me then. So I think the first official offer came around that time, like 93-ish. But then Graham had gone to. Sorry, if you can see, I'm on my rooftop in Miami, and if I think the dog could jump over, and there's another dog down,
No
and we're
worries.
like four stories up. So, anyways, Graham had left shortly after that. I believe they lost in the League Cup or the FA Cup to it could have been Bristol City or Bristol Rovers at the time. And so then when Roy Evans, he was obviously on the staff and knew about my interest, or the interest in me. When he took over, then the process started over a little bit, and then I started communicating a lot more with he and Doug Livermore.
Well, you're saying that's 92, 93. That's 5 years before you finally get this move. And I think you've had, 4 times maybe? There were other British moves that nearly came about?
Yeah, so after the Liverpool interest, and then Graham not staying at Liverpool, prior to that, I had a work permit to bid. I signed a contract with Nottingham Forest, and I couldn't get a work permit. That was prior to Liverpool. Then I had signed a contract with Newcastle when Kevin Keegan was at Newcastle, and got denied a work permit. I had signed a contract, agreed terms with Sunderland as well, and had a permit denied. And then there was some interest with Southampton at one stage, but never signed a contract. And then it was Liverpool was the next up, and we were denied the contract, but then or the work permit, sorry. But then we wanted on appeal, I believe, at the end of '96, the beginning of 1997.
You must have been so relieved then when it finally did get approved and you could join Liverpool.
Yeah, relief is a back then 100% relief was the feeling. Now fast forward to where I'm 50, it also, I look back on it as a blessing as well, because I was able to join Brøndby, meet some wonderful people, see a different aspect of life in Denmark, and then also had a wonderful experience at Galatasaray. So I got to play, albeit a small time, but in the inaugural season of MLS. So that, and in my hometown, or home state, I should say. Hometown didn't have a team, but home state of Columbus. So looking back on it, there's some positives to it, but at the time, in my mind, it was only negatives. So it was relief when I first got in there.
I know in the past you've hinted at there were maybe broken promises from Liverpool. But what were they saying to you in negotiations? Because I know the move didn't quite work out as you'd like, but at that time there was that excitement to be joining such a big club.
Yeah, I shouldn't, again, now as I'm 50, if I ever use the word broken promises, that's the incorrect word. I don't think now that I've been in so many various levels of football, you can never promise a player anything. I think, and looking back on it as well, it was the only time in my whole career that I had an inconsistent run of form, to be honest with you. So I always felt that I should be the number one goalkeeper wherever I was. That's the mentality of who I was. But I didn't have consistent games, especially that very first season when I finally got my opportunity. I'd have a couple of good games, and then there would be a mistake, followed by possibly another one, and then I would have a couple more decent games. And first impressions are so important at a football club. And if you look through my career, that's the only club that the first impressions, with everybody, with the fans, with the staff, players, was more of an inconsistent one, as opposed to this is our guy. It's the only one, and I'm not a nervous individual. I don't know why that was. There was competition, of course, with David James, but there's competitions at the Premier League at every club that you go to. There's at every position, to be honest with you. So I don't know, just one of those things, which is a shame, because it was it was a club I supported growing up, and things didn't work out. So I would if I ever use the word broken promises, I'd have to retract that, to be honest with you, because I don't think you can. Things were said, no doubt, but it was more to try to give me confidence and things of that nature. And as a player, I took it as that's my chance. You said this, and but we have to look back in the history books and look at, and then go for performances, just sheer performances. And at the very beginning, they were a bit inconsistent, to be honest with you. And it's a shame, because it's an incredible club, and I wish that I had gone in and performed consistently from minute one, and and I could have stayed there over 10 years, but it didn't work out that way.
And if you look at your situation, it was the same for you and David James, I suppose. You both had inconsistencies. You were both in the team and out the team. How did the manager approach that with you? What was your relationship like with David James? Because I imagine it's quite difficult for goalies when you're both being taken out the team and then put back in. Were there conversations between you or the manager saying, look, I'm going to have to take you out the firing line here, or you're going back in, you deserve this chance?
I think JMO documented it. Like, it was a really tough time for him. It was the first time, I believe, in his career that he had been truly challenged with losing his starting spot. He did not befriend me, so to speak. And so there was no special relationship there in saying that we are friends today. There's zero animosities between the two of us. I think it was, and none by me when I had joined, but I think it was easier for me because I was the one that was being scouted. I was the one that was being brought in. And I think he took it personal, which, again, in his mind, he was the number one goalkeeper, and he was a great goalkeeper. The athleticism that he had, his strength and stature, and I think he found it really difficult to cope with the fact that somebody else had come into the team that was brought in legitimately to replace him. And I think he found it difficult. With regards to how when it was just Roy Evans as manager, Roy called the shots. And when I forget the game, I may have played Coventry at home, and he told me after the game that I'd be playing the next, and that was Aston Villa away. I think JMO had made a mistake in the game. Not sure, it's a long time ago now, but he had told me. I mean, it was just so Evo dealt with it. I'm sure when Roy was thinking of replacing me, I'm sure he had a chat with JMO in the same manner. Very different when it was co-managers. I think that was really hard for Gerard and Roy too, because there were certain players that were brought in after the co-managers were together, and I guess those players would be deemed more of Gerard's signings in the long run, and the signings that Roy had made earlier, like, we would all go to Roy, but realistically the decisions had to be made by both. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult, I think, for everybody at the club to manage that, who should go where to talk to who. And there was a lot of change that was needed at the club. And Gerard, after Roy was let go, then Gerard had a lot of work to do, and he did a great job at doing it, to be honest with you, from off the field items such as the training ground, improvements, the staff improvements, just the overall culture at the club with the athleticism and the professionalism that was creeping in. I thought he did a wonderful job with the likes of a very young Michael Owen, a very young Steven Gerrard, a young Jamie Carragher, and look at the careers that they had. So there was a lot of work that he needed to do on and off the field. And once that was sort of his job, then he was able to do it. I think looking back on it, and you'd have to ask the powers that be, I believe they did the co-managerialship because they really didn't want to let Roy go, because he was such an incredible servant to the club, so loyal. I mean, he was in tears the day that he was let go in front of all the players. Players had an incredible amount of respect for the man. He was just a nice human being, and no one wanted to see him go. So, I think it was really hard for the people on the board and anyone involved in Liverpool to let Roy go at the time. That, wasn't change needed to happen at the club. Not necessarily talking about Roy needed to go. I'm just saying change overall needed to happen. And that's the way that they chose to go. And I think there were a lot of people that were sad having to, that's the choice that had to be made or that they did make at the time. Because I'm not really sure I ever met anyone that didn't like Roy Evans around the world of football. So, that's the way that it went down.
Do you remember what the dressing room reaction was to Houllier coming in and having these co-managers? Because it was unheard of, really, in top flight football over here. And then how did your relationship differ between the two of them?
Well, Roy signed me, so it was far easier to go and speak to Roy. My relationship at the time with Gerrard was a little bit turbulent, but we quickly put that behind. I desperately wanted to play and prove myself. When they did sell JMO, they brought in Sonder, and once they spent the money at the time, which was a decent sized transfer fee on Sonder, I saw the writing on the wall. I didn't want to leave Liverpool, but I knew I had to go and play football elsewhere. As the time rolled on at Liverpool, Gerrard and my relationship was fine. I knew where I stood at the club. I don't think I met with Gerrard and Rick Perry and my agent Paul Stretford at the time on doing the move to Blackburn. We met over at Gerrard's house, and they said they didn't want me to leave, and I believe them. I mean, I'm sure they wanted to have as strong a goalkeeping department as they could at the club, but at the same time they signed off on the transfer, which, looking back on it, I'm grateful for, because it wasn't a great deal of money. It was a free transfer, and they just had to take over £300,000 worth of bonus payments if I played 300 games. So it was not a big transfer at all. So I was very thankful for that they did it. And the rest from that moment on, every time I saw Gerrard, we had a good relationship. We had a far different relationship when he came to Villa. I was much older. He was coming into a club. It was a very good relationship. I think somebody wrote on a side note. Somebody wrote an article that I wasn't happy with the signing of Gerrard at Aston Villa, and Gerrard was looking to sell me and things. That was just, I think, mischief making from some departments of the press, because we didn't have a bad relationship at all at Aston Villa, and I was very sad to see when he had come down ill again. And when I was retired and post my career, we had actually done a few speaking engagements together. So it was just that little time. I was young, I wanted to play. It was at Liverpool, and it was a little bit turbulent, but nothing disrespectful or bad. Gerrard did some wonderful things for Liverpool, and for every club and federation that he worked for over his career. So, that's just sometimes the path your career takes. But I have an incredible amount of respect for what he did in the game overall.
I appreciate it's 25 years ago now, but what are your memories of playing at Anfield for the first time against Bolton, or like your first training session? Like you said, it's your boyhood club, you're joining them, so sure it's all exciting. It must have had hairs on the back of your neck walking out Anfield for the first time and playing with the likes of, I don't know, Jamie Redknapp, Robbie Fowler, these sorts of players.
You could be, I could be 100 and I wouldn't forget it. Like there's certain feelings in your life that you'll never forget, certain instances you'll never forget, and that's one of them. And in football, anyone who has had the opportunity to play for one of the big clubs, it doesn't just necessarily have to be Liverpool, but Liverpool's a special club, no doubt. It's a different sort of feeling. It's sort of hard to put your finger on the pulse. It's excitement. There's some nerves to it, without a doubt. There's anticipation. There, is and even as an away player, my career was not something that you would call illustrious at Liverpool. I got magnificent receptions when I came there as an opposing goalkeeper. I suppose they do that a lot to ex-players, especially goalkeepers that go and run in front of the cop. I know that, but perhaps they always knew that I gave 100% for the club, I'm sure. And I was never disrespectful to Liverpool, nor would I ever be after I had left. So, but every time I saw Liverpool away on the fixture list, I should say, not team sheet, that was, I would anticipate, I would really enjoy going back, and ask the skipper which way we're going, and that when you're going to go run to the cop, that you're going to get a fantastic ovation. And the best thing about what I found with Liverpool supporters is how, in England in general, but Liverpool especially, is their football knowledge is really second to none. Like they playing in games, I think it was my debut. Alan Thompson scored an absolutely worldly on me, and when the cop applauded his goal, because it was a special goal. It really was. Looking back on it, he absolutely leathered the ball across the body with his left foot into my upper left hand corner, and it was a superb strike. I'm not sure any goalkeeper saves it. I'm not sure two goalkeepers in the goal save it. It's one of those type of goals, and he got applause from it. It wasn't not sarcastic against us or myself. It was a genuine. All right. We won on the day, but that goal we're gonna give you applause for because it was special. So I found, and they do that today. They'll do it always. It's a different. You don't get that from too many grounds globally.
Looking at when you were at Liverpool, I think you finished your first season as first choice. You started your second season as first choice, but then there was a defeat to United, a couple of mistakes, and you lost your place from that game. I know you weren't happy at the time, but it seems now you've had that time to look back, a whole career you've lived. And how do you look back on that now when you're losing your place in the Liverpool team, with all that experience behind you now?
I still think it was harsh at the time, because I knew what I had inside myself to be a consistent goalkeeper. But again, I think a lot of it comes down to the first impressions as well, and there wasn't that confidence in me, So, and I've been a head coach at various levels as well, and I get it. You have to make decisions. You have to make decisions on if you think you'll win or not. The funny, now that I'm older, a bit more wiser in the game, I've never met a coach. I've never been on a coaching staff. I've never made decisions myself ever to go out and lose a game. So any decision that's ever made in football is because that head coach and the staff thinks this is best to win the game. I suppose some players could be left out for personal reasons, but I think those coaches end up losing their job anyways, because you should always make the decision that's best for the club and the team to win a game. So Yeah, it was a choice. I wasn't happy at the time, of course, but it was a choice. And looking back, looking back on things, all these instances helped me a lot. And I took the mistakes that I made at Liverpool, and when I went to Blackburn, I made sure that if I ever had made a mistake, I was going to work really hard, psychologically, work really hard, physically, to make sure that they didn't happen again. And that's where my career really took off consistently.
Mm-hmm. Looking at your final season with Liverpool, I might be a bit ignorant to the situation here, but it seems like a strange one because you were second choice behind Sander Westerveld. I know you got your chance for a couple of games when he had his punch up with Francis Jeffers, but you weren't always on the bench. I know you said the writing was on the wall when he came in, but was that basically a long season waiting to leave?
Well, the reason I wasn't on the bench had nothing to do with me being second or third choice. I was the second choice. It had to do with work permit regulations. Okay. So at the time, you could have multiple non-EU players on your books, but you could only have 3 in a match day squad. So we had Patrick Berger, Vladimir Smisser, and myself, and there was one more at the club, maybe Rigobert Song at the time. I think he could have been a work permitted player. And so you could only have 3. And if they didn't need to, they weren't going to put a goalkeeper and leave Vladdy, Patrick, or Rigo out. So that if you ever saw me not on the team, the squad list, as a sub, that was the reason why. And that was communicated to me. I knew that. I mean, again, not crazily happy about it, but I understood that. And then when Sander had his who was that? That was against Everton, wasn't it? And I think Stan Staunton went goal. So because I was on the bench for that game, but we had already used our substitute, so I couldn't go on. So Stan had to play, or maybe I wasn't on the bench. I'm not sure. Who knows? But anyways, that was the reason.
That explains it. Thank you. When David James left, was there a brief moment when you thought you could be the number one here, or were they already clear that they were going to be bringing someone else in and you realized you might have to move on?
Well, when they sold him, I knew they'd bring someone else in, but I also always tried to back myself against anybody to be the number one. Again, I think trust has to go into it. I just think with the way things had started in my Liverpool career, that Gerrard and Phil Thompson was then the assistant coach. I just don't think they had full, faith in me as the long-term consistent Liverpool goalkeeper. And I don't think there was a lot I could have done, to be honest with you, because I think I could have played 10 games on the bounce, had 10 clean sheets, and the next mistake I made, I think the staff had already made up their mind. See, I told you. When in reality, goalkeepers make mistakes all the time. But when they have something, when there's a seed of doubt already there, then it's really tough to change the minds. Now, when Gerrard came to Aston Villa, it was easier for him to trust me because I had just put from 2000 to when did Gerrard come in, 2010 or something like that. I just put 10 solid years of consistent performances behind me. So it was easier then to say, okay, I trust him now. That's kind of how it worked.
I don't want to say, do you have any regrets leaving Liverpool? Because obviously you don't. You went to Blackburn, you won promotion, you won the League Cup. But when you look at what happened in those few years after you left Liverpool, with them winning the treble and then Sander Westerveld leaving so soon, is there that seed of doubt of what would have happened if you had stayed? You would have won a few trophies and you might have had the chance to be a first choice, even though you didn't perhaps have that trust.
Sadness. It's not sadness, not regret. I had, and look at it this way as well, because they had offered me the opportunity to stay at Liverpool. I had the choice to do it, but I could have been at this wonderful football club, this incredible football club, and never really played. I always wanted to sign my contracts to play football, not knowing that the likelihood is I was going to be a sub. And they went through a lot of goalkeepers before they found Pepe Reina. And he was a long-term number one. And now they have one of the world's greatest analysis at the club. But they went through a fair few goalkeepers before they found the consistent one they wanted. So I think I was there all along, but it was also down to my performances as well. That just didn't instill that confidence from the onset of Gerrard coming in. And I'm sure when Gerrard, before he was signed as the co-manager, he had a lot of communications with Peter Robinson and with Rick Perry, and I'm sure they were going through the squad, and I'm sure Rick Perry had said, we have this goalkeeper, and and he's been inconsistent so far. And I'm sure from that point, and then when Gerrard came in, the first time that I made a mistake, or the second, and then I think it all just came in his mind in that manner, and it was tough to break out of it. So 0 regrets for leaving. Sadness, of course. I think anyone who has the opportunity to play at your Liverpools or your Uniteds, or nowadays Man Cities and stuff, and you have to leave to go play. I'm sure there are not many players who want to leave these clubs. Every now and again you get the opportunity to go from these clubs to Real Madrid or Barcelona or something. Not regret, sadness maybe.
And then if we go to,
yeah, can we just sorry to jump in, can we just make this the last question, please?
Yeah, sure. If we go to the end of your career, you were linked with a return to Liverpool. I think there were talks, but you went to Tottenham. What was the story there? How close were you to going back to Liverpool?
Incredibly close. I spoke with Damien a number of times. Kamali, who was at the club at the time, and Kenny. The big difference, and I was really close to doing it. The big one was, going back to my answer, I always sign contracts to play. Tottenham was offering me the chance to play and be the number one for at least a year. And I was going into Liverpool as the out and out number 2 because Reina was still at the club. And there were talks of doing things in the academy with Liverpool, and because I was 40 at the time, and I had the same at Tottenham. That had been discussed prior to going there, and there was more money at Liverpool, but that wasn't the deciding factor on the decision. And I actually surprised myself a little bit at not going back to Liverpool, because it would have been. It was very close. I had the decision between West Brom to stay at Aston Villa, Tottenham, and Liverpool at 40 years of age. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better scenario. And at Villa, everything had gone well. It's just that there was so much change at Aston Villa that they had only offered a 1-year contract, and I thought there was just too much change going on. But I loved my time there, but it just felt right. So yes, it was extremely close. It went down to virtually the last day of where I had to decide, and I had both contracts in front of me. And I had to decide one of them. So yeah, it was really close.
Perfect. I know we've just said the last one, but have you got quick time?
Theo, I think we have to wrap up there, please. If that's all right.
What's a quick one? What did you want to ask?
It was just what your thoughts are on FSG and how the reaction to Liverpool's success under them is in the States. Obviously, you're American, you're in Miami. Just wondered what your thoughts on FSG and Liverpool were.
My thoughts on FSG, I don't know them that well, to be honest with you. I know them over here. My thoughts on Liverpool is that they're a magnificent team to watch, and I think Jurgen Klopp has done an incredible job. I would have to see that FSG has done a good job because of the players that Jurgen Klopp has. So I imagine they're working congruently together, very, 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 very well. So I love watching. They're one of the most exciting teams to watch. They have probably arguably the best player in the world in Salah at this moment in time. Their attack force is incredible. Their goalkeepers exciting to watch as well. So not anything at this moment bad or negative to say.